Rank 1, the Ryadovoy, Private. You are nobody, literally. The word Ryadovoy means one of the Rao. You are a number in a formation. In 1941, hundreds of thousands of Soviet privates were thrown into battle with almost no training. Some had 1 week, some had 3 days. Stalin's doctrine was simple: mass, speed, sacrifice. You were the sacrifice. You slept in holes. You ate when there was food, which was not always. Your ration was technically 800 grams of bread per day, some kasha, maybe some saltfish. In reality, half of that if you were lucky, and nothing if the supply line was cut, which it was, constantly. And here's the brutal part. If you retreated without orders, if fear took your legs and you ran, you could be shot. Order number 227, not one step back. Issued by Stalin in 1942. Blocking detachments, your own troops stood behind you with orders to shoot deserters. You were in the meat grinder, and the grinder did not care about you. Rank 2, Yefreiter. Lance Corporal 1, step up, almost meaningless but not quite. The Yefreiter was typically a soldier trusted enough to lead a fire team of 2 or 3 men, or to carry a specific weapon, a light machine gun, a sniper rifle, an anti-tank rifle. You had slightly more responsibility, but the same rations, the same risks, the same life expectancy in the early war. What did change was respect. In the brutal social hierarchy of a Soviet rifle company, being a Yefreitor meant the privates looked to you when the sergeant was dead, and the sergeant was often dead. Rank 3, Mladshai Sergeant, Junior Sergeant. Now we're talking. You command a squad, usually 8 to 11 men. You are responsible for their movement, their fire discipline, their lives. Junior sergeants were forged fast in World War II, crash courses of a few weeks, because the losses of experienced NCOs in 1941 were catastrophic. Entire divisions of officers and sergeants were captured or killed in the first months. The Red Army had to rebuild its brain under fire. As a junior sergeant, you were constantly at the front. Your job was to be the first through the breach, the last to pull back. You led from the front, not because it was heroic, but because your men wouldn't move otherwise. Life expectancy at the front for a junior sergeant in a major offensive, sometimes measured in hours. Rank 4, Sergeant and Starshai Sergeant, Sergeant and Senior Sergeant, the backbone. These were the men who actually ran the Red Army at the ground level. A senior sergeant could command a full squad or serve as a platoon deputy. He was the institutional memory of a unit, knowing where the mines were, which officers were competent, which orders to follow to the letter, and which to interpret loosely to keep his men alive. These men developed a grim, practical wisdom. They knew that following orders blindly got you killed. They knew that showing initiative could also get you killed, or worse, accused of insubordination. The balance was everything. Some of the most decorated soldiers in the entire Soviet military were senior sergeants. Men like Vasily Zaitsev, the famous Stalingrad sniper, began as an enlisted man. The war turned ordinary soldiers into legends, but for every legend, there were 10,000 men whose names nobody remembers. Rank 5, Mladshiwai Lieutenant, Junior Lieutenant Platoon Commander, 30 to 40 men. And statistically, the most dangerous officer rank in the entire Red Army. These were kids, 19, 20 years old, pushed through 3-month officer schools and sent straight to the front. Their job was to lead from the front, be visible, be an example, which meant they caught the first bullet. Often literally. At Stalingrad, a junior lieutenant's life expectancy during an offensive was sometimes counted in hours. And yet, these were the men who threw themselves on machine guns, who held impossible positions, who kept their platoons moving when every instinct said stop. Rank 6, Lieutenant and Starshai Lieutenant, Lieutenant and Senior Lieutenant. If you made it to Senior Lieutenant, you had something priceless: experience. You could read terrain in seconds, position men before being asked, and quietly interpret suicidal orders just enough to keep your platoon alive. But survival wasn't only about the Germans. Every unit had a political commissar watching for disloyalty. One wrong word at the wrong moment could send you to a tribunal instead of the front. You learned to wear 2 faces, the one that fought the war and the one that survived the system. Rank 7, Kapitan, Captain Company Commander, 150 men. Now it's not about personal courage, it's about management under fire. You coordinated artillery, neighboring units, battalion command, supply lines, all simultaneously, often without sleep, often without accurate maps. You translated impossible orders from staff officers who'd never seen the ground into something your exhausted men could actually execute. The captains who survived to 1943 had been burned clean of everything unnecessary. Their men felt it. A good captain was the difference between a unit that held and one that collapsed. And things always got hard. Rank 8, Mayor and Podpolkovnik, Major and Lieutenant Colonel. 500 to 800 men. You're no longer in the firefight. You're deciding where it happens and who walks into it. Physical courage matters less now. What matters is judgment under impossible pressure. because being wrong costs hundreds of lives, but being too cautious could cost you a tribunal. Order number 227 wasn't only for privates, officers who hesitated, who lost ground, who showed what Stalin called panic mentality, faced demotion, penal battalions, or execution. The enemy was in front of you. Your own command structure was behind you. Both were dangerous. Rank 9, Polkovnik, Colonel, up to 3,000 men, your own artillery, engineers, signals, a small self-contained army. The colonels who reached this rank by 1943 had been selected by the harshest filter imaginable: survival. The incompetent were dead or purged. What remained were officers who had learned through failure and blood how modern war actually worked. Combined arms, coordination, speed. By 1944, operations like Bagration showed they hadn't just copied German blitzkrieg doctrine. In many ways, they had surpassed it. General ranks, tens of thousands of men, sometimes hundreds of thousands. And here's the central contradiction. These men operated under a system of terror and produced genuine military genius, both simultaneously. Stalin's purges had removed 35,000 officers before the war, decapitating the entire high command. The replacements were too young and too frightened to show initiative, because initiative that failed looked like insubordination, and insubordination had one ending, but the war itself became the selection process. Zhukov, who could argue with Stalin and survive. Rokossovsky, tortured in the Gulag, teeth knocked out, fingers broken, released in 1940, and then went on to destroy an entire German army group. Zhukov, who held Stalingrad when every military logic said it was lost. They didn't come from perfect academic records. They came from the fire. Marshal Sovetskogo Soyuza, Marshal of the Soviet Union. 5 stars, a handful of men, operations involving millions of soldiers across fronts hundreds of miles wide. Zhukov alone was present at every decisive turning point of the Eastern Front: Moscow, Stalingrad, Kursk, Berlin. No commander on any side of World War II can claim that. And yet even here, Stalin's shadow reached. After the war, Zhukov was accused of claiming too much personal credit for the victory and exiled to command a minor provincial district. The reward for winning the greatest war in history was simply political survival.